Hey and welcome back. My name is Alana and today we're going to be discussing the first Wheel of Time book, The Eye of the World by Robert Jordan. Now this has had a lot of coverage lately over social media and other outlets because the first season of the TV show did drop only last month or the month before. Time is a concept which does weird things as shown within this series. At this point in time I have finished book 1 only of the series, and I have also finished the first season of the TV show adaptation. And let me tell you, I had a weird entry point into this series because I did consume the TV show and this book at the same time. And don't worry, if you haven't yet started your journey with this series, this video will be spoiler free. So, this book is thick and it lets you know it. Minus the glossary, this edition that I have in my hands is 771 pages long, and yeah, it kind of felt like it. Before I jump in, I will say my overall rating of this would probably be a 3.75 out of 5. So I did enjoy this. I definitely don't recommend trying to speed read this, which is not what I did, but this is a book that you cannot consume quickly. You're going to be in this for a long time. I think it took me about a month to finish this, but that didn't take away from my experience with it. I still really enjoyed being in this world, but there were a few things. So we're going to jump into pros and cons of this book, with the first big pro being the world building. Wow, extensive and beautiful and described really well. I found while reading this one that I didn't have a lot of trouble visualizing it because Robert Jordan is very descriptive and he paints the scene and then he puts you right into it and you know where you stand in it. There were times when characters were walking through a new city and they were just seeing it for the first time and I felt like I was right there with them. There was also the start where we are in the country with the main group and it felt very homely and cozy. If you haven't heard of The Eye of the World, which is book 1 in this series, essentially we follow a group of young people who have been told that one of them is the chosen one who will either bring about the destruction of the world or who will save it. This is fantasy. It has a lot of fantastical elements in it. There is different factions as well. So you have the Aja, who are the magic users within this world and who are all women. If men touch the one true source, then they go crazy. So it's advised against doing that. And there's a lot of talk of the wheel weaving as it will, and times and ages rolling back around and kind of repeating themselves. So the back just says, the wheel of time turns and ages come and pass, leaving memories that become legend. Legend fades to myth, and even myth is long forgotten when the age that gave it birth returns again. What was, what will be, and what is may yet fall under the shadow. So very epic. I would put this in a similar category to The Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones, things like that. But it is its own thing entirely, and there's a really big fandom to deal with this already who have been really welcoming. It's been really great to have people commenting on my Wheel of Time videos asking, as I was going through it, if I had guessed who the Dragon Reborn or the Chosen One in this story is yet, and just very gently telling me a few different things about it that I hadn't picked up on, so that was really, really good. So yes, jumping back in, the world building in this is fantastic. I'm gonna put this down now because it's heavy. I really enjoy the different cities that we got to walk through. Felt like setting was done really well as well. This is a traveling slash journey type story, so I do tend to struggle with these stories, just me personally. I want to get to the point, and I always find books that have this structure tend to drag a little bit, which this did in places. I think the plot came and went as we went along, but overall I could appreciate what it was doing and what it's setting up. Because this series is very long. It's like 14 or 15 books long, and that is a huge commitment. And yes, I plan to continue, but again, when time permits, I'm not feeling overly hyped to continue right now, but I will in the future. So yes, the length of this novel was a factor. to me initially picking up this series. Like I said, nearly 800 pages long. I am a fan of Robin Hobb and Game of Thrones and Priory of the Orange Tree and things like that, so I'm not scared of big books, but I will admit that I have to factor in the time commitment that it will take, especially alongside books that I might read for work or whatnot. So the length was long, there's no denying it, and some places did meander, but I enjoyed what we got here and there. So let's talk about characters to try and give this video a little bit more structure. Perrin, I loved his journey that he was going on. I loved the changes that were happening to his life, and everything happening with him I found fascinating and I want to see more of as the series goes on. I'm sure that will crop up more. Can't wait for it. Rand was annoying in places, but in an innocent, naive way. I have heard a few things about his character development and arc as the series goes on, so I think this was a good place to start off on him, a good foothold to kind of step off of and continue on with. But not my favourite character. I didn't mind reading from his point of view because he is one of the main protagonists of this book one. I especially love seeing the world through his, Mat and Perrin's, and even Egwene and Nynaeve as well. Seeing the world through their viewpoint, because it was very much taking the people who were born in the country away from their home country small life setting and then just tossing them into this wider world where things that they believe are myths are actually real and out there, and different places they never thought they would go to because they never thought they would leave their small town, and they're there and they're experiencing it. So I loved that viewpoint so very much. I thought that was done extremely well, and I just love how we were walking through these new places, or, you know, hurtling through these places in some points, and the characters were just in awe of their surroundings, because in turn that projected it onto me as the reader and my own experience. I felt the majesty and just the huge moment that it was for them. I felt that too, because it was written in a way that projected that onto me. So I enjoyed seeing this world through those characters. Nynaeve, I actually enjoyed. I have heard that some people don't enjoy her because she is very bossy and spiky, I want to say. I know I use this term spiky as a characteristic thing a lot in my videos, but she was spiky, and I don't know how best to describe her, as she was very prickly in points as well, but I loved that because she was kind of keeping it real. She was the one saying, we have come from this small place and we are now out here, and I'm concerned for my people, and all I want to do is make sure they're okay. And while some of the other characters had stars in their eyes, she did not. And I felt that was very realistic and true to her character. Moraine was another standout character. She's kind of like the Gandalf character, and I loved how she had a lot of power within the story, but how she wasn't all-knowing. So she's trying her best to do what she thinks is right throughout this story, but you also get this feeling that that might not always be the best thing for the characters, but it's the path that she sees and that she has to continue on. Her friendship with her warder, Lan, is it Lan? I'm already forgetting. I hope it is. But their relationship together as well was very solid, and I liked that friendship pairing as well. One thing that I didn't really like with how some of the characters were written was, while this is a world where the author, for the time that this first book was written in, which was the 90s, he's putting women at the forefront as the people who can use this power source safely, and they are the only ones that should be using it. While he's giving power to women through that point, he's taking away when he's writing some of the other women characters, in the fact that there are a few moments where Egwene and Nynaeve sat back within the scene and they got paired together in the same sentence, and they were described as cowering back or things like that. They weren't decisive in the front, which I know could be their character, but it was very easy to tell that they were the scared girls in the background and the boys were taking the forefront. So while I think the author did a very, very good thing when he made this magic system where women had the power, sometimes it kind of slips a little bit in scenarios like that. But hey, for when he was writing within his time, he was still very progressive. I feel with including women as the main magic wielders, it's just every now and again when he pairs those girls up and he just says they, you know, took a step back or they look concerned and one of the boys had to step forward. I didn't enjoy that one so much. I will say too, the prose of this, I'm not a prose snob at all, but some of these sentences were very straightforward, very repetitive. Some of the word choices were repetitive is what I mean by that. And it was very simple and easy to read, but I think that he relies heavily on description and on things like that. So I didn't mind reading this book. I think that's another reason why it felt a little slow in places, was just the prose choices. But in saying that, fancy prose works for some books and it doesn't for others. I think the kind of country bumpkin nostalgia, small country person in a big city, I think that worked very well because the author's choice of prose was so on point with that. It was very simple and plain. And yeah, while I can say that it's not my favorite prose of all time, it's also not the worst. It's just very simple and it works for the story. But yeah, not my favorite. And then my last 2 points of this little review. The first one, I didn't know who the Dragon Reborn was until I finished the book and found out who the Dragon Reborn was. And like I mentioned earlier, I had people commenting on one of my Wheel of Time videos, do you know who it is yet? Who are you guessing? I was so wrong. It pointed me in all these different directions, and I think again this is me also watching the TV show alongside reading the first book. The TV show was also throwing red herrings everywhere. I didn't know. I couldn't pick who it was, but looking back, it is obvious once you've finished the book who the Dragon Reborn is, but while you're in it, not so much. So hats off for the author for being able to do that, because you get told one of these young people could be the Dragon Reborn, or they are the Dragon Reborn, but even they don't know. And it's this really fun mystery to try and work out. Each character has their own thing going on, so that kind of makes you think, well, it could be them because of this, but then this person has this and this person has this, and I love that. I love that mystery element to it. I am intrigued to see where the story goes from here now that we know who it is. But, interesting. And then that leads on to my last point, which is the ending. I have heard that the ending of The Eye of the World is controversial, and that is that some people feel it cuts off, it's too quick, it's too parceled, and I'm kind of on the fence with it. I do think that there's weird things happening with the power within this tale, because you see someone defeating someone who is meant to be really, really strong, and then their timeline was just kind of snipped. And because we're building up for the entire novel to get to this confrontation, it doesn't really end up feeling satisfactory. I can see where people are coming from with that. On the other hand, I like that the events of book 1 then push characters in different directions. So I feel like we're going to go many places within this world, and I love that. I love multiple point of views. I love character arcs that go places where you're not expecting them to, and I love when authors utilize their entire world. They don't just focus down here. So there you go. Those are my thoughts on The Eye of the World, book 1 in the Wheel of Time series. Overall, I did enjoy this, but there were moments that lagged. So I had pros and cons for sure with this, and I can appreciate what it's done for genre, and the series, I'm sure, will just hit more strides as I continue on with the books. But yeah, Wheel of Time. Definitely wasn't disappointed to have read this, but at this point in time, it's not a new favorite series of mine either. So I'm sitting in this in-between land right now, and I am very open for the other books to boost me up to a higher level, but I'm also going to be quietly chill about them now going forwards. I'm not going to set my expectations too high. I have heard that you need to read the first 4 books to have more of an idea of how you feel about it, which is a huge commitment, but like I said earlier, I'm not afraid of big series, so I will get there one day. It's definitely been an interesting time consuming this alongside of the TV show, which a similar thing. I felt super hyped about it because of the bubble of Wheel of Time that I was sitting in throughout this experience, but then the TV show like, it wasn't bad, and there were some really great moments in it, but it wasn't great. It wasn't top tier level either. So now I'm just quietly hovering in the middle, and I'm keen to be pushed either way as I continue on. So there you go. I hope those thoughts made sense eventually. We'll get there in the end. Let me know in the comments down below if you've read Wheel of Time, if you've continued on after the first book, or if you stopped, and why, without going into spoilers, because I've already seen 2 spoilers so far, which were huge ones. So let's try and rein that in. As always, don't forget to chuck a like on this video and consider subscribing to the channel, and I will see you in another one. Bye!